What's going on, wrestling fans? It is I, Steve Fall, and welcome to 10 Count right here on Wrestling News Co. on today's edition. Oh, it's going to be a fun one. I think we're talking about Batista a lot here, too. It's Amari Miller. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am doing great. And the reason I bring up Batista is because there's a video from about 2 years ago now on the WWE's YouTube channel where I believe it's you and the Rascals.
Yes.
They might have had a different name at NXT at the time, but they and you are doing a little Batista impression. I think everyone loves the fireworks and the slam down and the slap the chest. What about Batista speaks to you, and I guess the wrestling universe in general?
Yeah. So I feel like Batista speaks to me in the sense of just the energy that he has. It feels like he's always like an extra level over everyone else. So having that like fireworks was like da da da. It's like you always wanted to be like that explosive person. I feel like it just brings like that extra energy. So especially being around the Rascals at the time, that was like they're a different type of energy. They're so much fun to be around. And like I think just because I actually didn't know them really when we made that video. So they were like, let's do something. Like, who do you know? I was like, oh, I love Batista. I love his entrance. And I remember Wesley walked by and I was like, do you want to do Batista's entrance with me? He was like, yeah, sure. And then he asked his partner, Nash. And then we just did the video. And ever since I watch it, it just brings me back good smiles and happiness.
That's good to hear. Unfortunately, Batista blocked me, I think, in 2014 on Twitter because he was wearing a blue outfit. And so Blue Tista was born, not just from me, but from the WWE fans, from the WWE. They even started, the WWE that is, started the hashtag Blue Tista. Well, Batista did not like other people using that term, and I was blocked on Twitter. It's okay.
Maybe he might have unblocked you. Have you checked lately?
Oh, I've checked.
Oh, well.
Yes, and unblocked me. But again, they made a Blue Tista action figure. They had posters, but for some strange reason, I was the evil one that night. I think Extreme Rules or Payback, one of those. It was Evolution versus The Shield. So good times all around, though. But let's talk about how you got into professional wrestling in general. Yes. How did you discover wrestling? Was it a friend, a family member? Were you channel surfing?
No, so it was actually my cousin. My cousin was a huge Mortal Kombat wrestling fan. And at the time, I think I would say like 5. And like, you go to your grandma's house, it'd be like all your cousins there, you play video games. And I always hung around the boys in my family. I was never a huge female, like growing up with the females, like girly girl. So being around my cousin, we would play video games. So I'm thinking like Pokemon Go, was like just animated. Mortal Kombat was animated. I thought wrestling was the same way. And I remember falling in love with Jeff Hardy, like watching like the way my cousin would play with him on the video games and stuff was just so entertaining. I loved his hair, his music, the like everyone does, the Jeff Hardy dance. And there was one day my cousin's like, hey, this is like real. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, we watched this on TV. Come here. And that was like the day I fell in love with it. I remember I used to like take all the pay-per-views that you would like have to pay for, and I would just buy them. My mom would be like, why is there $1,000 worth of pay-per-views? And I'm like, I don't know. Like Corey did it. So there's like really good memories. I think my first WrestleMania was 25 with like the WrestleMania. It was blue with the stars.
Yeah.
That's first ever WrestleMania. So my cousin got me into it. After that, I kind of went in and out of phases of watching it because, like, I got bullied growing up, like being like, oh, you're a female, you like wrestling. So I went in and out of phases of liking it. But I told myself that, like, if this is something I'm meant to do, it'll keep coming back into my life and I can never get rid of it. And it just spurred from there. And I remember moving back from Chicago back home. And my cousin was like, oh, I found an indie school. You should go try it. Tried it, fell in love with it. Just 3 years later, I got signed to WWE, and 3 years later, here we are.
Wow. All right. So then I've gone to performance center tryouts before. I've gone to you go to different locations. So I was at one last year in Detroit, SummerSlam, and they have like 60, 70 collegiate athletes from basketball to football to gymnastics to ballerinas, everything. trying out to be professional wrestlers. And
Yes.
if you think of like a football workout, it is not the same thing as a wrestling tryout where they are trying to make you pretty much throw up. It feels like they want to test your stamina. So what was that experience like? How did you end up in the WWE? Did you go to one of these tryouts?
So actually, I got lucky and I didn't have to go to one of the tryouts. I said I would do like I did like an off tryout, which I would say Evolve was a thing at the time with Gabe Sapolsky.
Yep.
And that was kind of like their, I wouldn't say that it was kind of like a developmental, but also a scouting situation. So I did a recruitment camp for Gabe. It was 3 days. Eddie was there, the ref, Tommaso Ciampa was there, William Regal, Robbie Brookside, Gabe. And I think there were some more people. Shayna Baszler was there. So there's more people. I kind of apologize if I forget. But I went and did that for 3 months or 3 days. And then I remember getting picked to do a show at Evolve. And the show at Evolve, I got to wrestle Markova? Yes, Markova. And then from that, I got to
Natalia Markova from NWA?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And then I got to wrestle Shotzi. So I remember right after I wrestled Shotzi, she got her contract for WWE. So that was really cool. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it was kind of like life's over, wrestling's over. Like I wasn't a big name in the independent circuit at the time. So I had to start everything over. And I remember Gabe messaging me and Gabe's like, hey, if anyone offers your contract, talk to me first. Let's talk about it. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, like 4 months later passed, I wasn't thinking about wrestling. And I got an email saying, hey, this is so-and-so. Are you open for a virtual chat? And I was like, Gabe, I just got an email from blah, blah, blah. He's like, congratulations. I was like, what? He's like, have you had to call yet? I was like, no. He's like, oh, well, call me when you get after the call. And I ended up getting an offer that way. So I feel like having that 3-day tryout with Gabe was in the sense my tryout for WWE because COVID had hit.
Oh man. COVID, the dream killer for so many people.
So many.
But luckily, Gabe obviously saw something in you and believed in you. And obviously the WWE did too, because they didn't just during COVID, it felt like there was a hiring freeze.
Yes. Yes, there was. But then there was also like a hiring frenzy at the same time.
Well, I believe because when you had major companies that aren't the WWE looking for talent, well, everyone's trying to get the pile they can while they can because nobody knew how long COVID was going to last for.
My goodness, I know. That was like the most stressful. Like it felt like a year of my life. I don't even think it was a year, but it felt like it was forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it like the real, like for instance, I caught COVID like 2 months ago in New York and I was out on a count for like 3 days straight. But I had COVID twice before that. Go back to like 2020 and 2021. It was like, I have a small cough. This time, 2 months ago, I was like, I was dead.
What was happening?
Yeah, count me out. My wife took my kids and she was like, I'm leaving for 4 days. We'll be back when you are alive again. And I was like, okay.
So I love you when you come back.
Yeah. Please go away. So I was in my bed for like 3 days. I swear to God, I didn't get up. I had the body aches. I had the no taste. I had all that stuff. Before that, it was nothing.
So I never had that. I never had the no taste. So I had COVID 4 times.
You beat me.
The first time I had COVID, I think was like in September before like COVID was a thing. Because I remember I was at work and I was a server at the time and I was like, I feel so sick. And I remember drinking a Sprite and I was like, do you taste mold? And they were like, mold? And I was like, drink it. They're like, no. I was like, no, seriously, like it might just be me. And they were like, it tastes normal. So I remember I went to the like urgent care really quick to get a test and it was a flu test. And they're like, well, it's kind of like blurry, so you don't have the flu. And then 2 months later, I had COVID. But I remember being in bed. I lost like 8 pounds. And my dad came to my apartment. And I was like, Daddy, like, I feel sick. And he's like,
yeah, get away from me.
He's like, no. I was like, I just need my father.
Yes. Yes. That's how it all started. My daughter had it, then my son got it, and then I got it, and my wife got it. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was awful.
Yeah.
But at least in that time that you were still given an opportunity in the WWE, because a lot of people were turned away. A lot of people gave up on their dreams because they thought this is never going to end. So if it's not going to end, then I'm not going to get an opportunity. So I'm gonna go find a new way to make money, because obviously when you start out in wrestling, the money is not really there. It's more about passion and
No,
love versus
it
making
is.
money.
It
So
is. It's the
if
hot
anyone
dog and
wants
the
to go out there.
handshake.
Oh, yes, yes. Sometimes no hot dog, sometimes no handshake.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like a thank you, and you're like, got it, thank you.
You're like,
But it's a lot about
I
opportunities.
you're like, I still like hot dogs though. I'm still hungry.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Can I have a bag of chips at least with one of those sodas that you're selling?
they're like, no.
Yeah.
So when you got into the WWE though, obviously you're in the PC, you're training amongst other people. Who is in your class daily? Like, because we've heard stories, I've interviewed other people who were in the PC, and they all have different, classes of who they were with.
Mhm.
Who is in your class that say people would know from Raw and SmackDown in today's world?
So it's weird because classes change very regularly there. So there's not like a set class that you would have. A person on the main roster that I could say was in one of my classes was Piper Niven, and she became like one of my best friends. Alba Fire wasn't technically in one of the classes, but I hung around her a lot in the PC when she was in the PC. Katana Chance is one other person on the main roster, Katana and Kaden. I feel like that's pretty much it, because I feel like a lot of people left when I got there. Like when I first started, we had Raquel, we had Dakota, Athena, now Ember Moon at the time. We had Aaliyah, Mandy was there. So we had a couple of people that was kind of just like around at the time that we don't have anymore. Indy Hartwell is a person that we spent a lot of time around each other as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun class. That sounds like a good
It was
bunch.
oh, it was great. It was great.
It's interesting to
Absolutely
have
loved it.
Piper as one of your close friends coming in there, because I interviewed Chelsea Green a couple weeks ago, and
Mhm.
she was talking to me about how her and Piper like shared an apartment together back in like 2015, and they didn't
Mhm.
really talk to each other for all these years, and now they're tag team on
Yeah,
Raw and SmackDown and the main roster. So obviously you never know what's going to happen next. But what was your
you
relationship
don't.
like with like Shawn Michaels, the guy who's pretty much running the whole show in NXT in the PC? Did you ever have conversations? Did he sit down with you?
So he's very busy. He's a very busy man. So I would only see him like maybe once or twice a week, and it would be definitely on Tuesdays because he'd be in production figuring out everything, and then sometimes he'd be walking through the PC. So it's a very like, hi Mr. Michaels, hi Mr. Sean, and then you keep walking. I've had a couple conversations with him, but just like, hey, like what's next? Is there anything I could do better? Is there anything that like will get me here? So it's kind of just like off and on, but I did have a couple conversations with him about like the moonsault I hit. I hit a moonsault before I got my concussion, and Sean was like, I was waiting for you to come back, and you never came back. I was gonna be like, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, well, got concussed. But the other conversation we had was about my entrance, where he was like, I love your entrance. It just like makes me want to bob around all the time. And I just looked at him and I was like, there's no way Shawn Michaels is saying this to me. But I had a closer relationship with Matt Bloom than Mr. Michael, just because I didn't really see him as much.
Matt Bloom was a substitute teacher in the town I grew up in. So it's funny. I bumped into him once, and I was like, "You were a substitute teacher in the high school that I went to eventually." And he was like, "Oh yeah, 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 Revere, Revere." And I was like, "Oh man!" But I obviously, I couldn't say like, "Hey, remember when your old nickname was a penis piercing? Do you remember that?" And he'd be like,
Yeah.
"What?"
Yep. Yeah. And it's funny because I never knew that. Like, what happened? I think we were in the PC talking about something like that. And we were talking about, because he was on, we have TV screens sometimes in the PC. So like old matches play. And I remember being like, oh, I remember this. And they were like, do you know what that means? I was like, oh my God, no, is this like bad? And it was a whole conversation. We were just like laughing about it. So it's
Yeah,
funny. I'm
it's
like,
hilarious.
you lived your life to the fullest.
Yeah, he's Matt Bloom has, I think, done everything you could think of, from Giant Bernard to Prince Albert to Hip Hop Hippo to
Yep.
Tensai. He is, I
Hmm.
think, done everything. But obviously, he must be someone who is sought after as being talented and knows what he's talking about, because for as long as I can remember, he's been there in the PC before he was even a PC to help train the
Hmm.
future of the WWE. So,
Hmm.
it's awesome to see. But
Yeah.
you know, recently, though, in the news, it popped up that you and the WWE were parting ways.
Yes.
Now, why part ways? Is this a thing that both of you and the company have talked about and said, listen, something's not here, something's not clicking, we need to go our separate ways? Like, what is the discussion of deciding to step away?
It was mostly just creative. Like they didn't have anything for me creatively, and my contract was ending anyways. So I just felt like it was, best for both worlds. It mostly came from their side, but it was like, not like, oh, please, like I'm begging. It was more of like, you know what? Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Cause there's nothing else I could have done. I worked my butt off. I was there every day. I was like putting in stats and things like that. And there's no bad blood on either side. So it was very understandable from a business perspective of where they were coming from. And like, I did have injuries on the throughout my path in WWE. So I can get why it's like, she might be a reliability, but to end it all, it was just nothing creatively for me. So it was just time for us to just go our separate ways. Doesn't mean I'm not going to go back. Doors not shut, Coach was saying that he would always put his name behind me if needed. So there's a very good tight relationship between me and WWE right now.
And so, were there ideas of like storylines that you had in your brain that you tried to toss out there? Because you did have a few matches like on television. Cora Jade you fought in 2-5 Live. Martinez you wrestled as well. So there's Lacy Evans when you're underneath a different name. So it's not like you haven't been clued in on what's going on and how to be presented on television. Were there ideas that you had that weren't being presented in the light that you wanted them to be?
I think it could, yes and no. And I think it could also be just the timing. Like, because you had like the Tiffany's coming in, and I feel like they're very athlete focused right now because they are spectacular athletes and they can do amazing things that I feel like a lot of the indie workers aren't doing as of right now, or maybe not taking that step to do it. So it could have just been right place, right time. Like it was right place, right time for me to get signed, but maybe it wasn't right place, right time to be there for me. Um, like Lash is getting her push, which I'm so happy about it. Jakara Jackson's getting hers. And I just feel like I might have put myself in a bubble with my gimmick and the music. That's just personally how I take it, because obviously being like a bubbly person, there's not really layers to go, or it was very hard for me to get like a different layer of that. And then by that time, it could have just been too late. So I don't know. That's the thing. It sucks. Like you never really know, but you can have ideas.
Of course. Of course. No, I brought up Chelsea Green earlier. I interviewed Chelsea Green when she got laid off by the WWE a couple years ago. And then I interviewed her last week when she's been there for about a year. And
Right.
I asked, oh, what did you pitch or maybe didn't go well? And she pitched she wanted to be Seth Rollins' like crazy nun like partner when he was the Messiah. And I was like,
Yeah.
hey, better than nothing, I guess. So obviously any idea in your brain is a good idea, but to the WWE, maybe they don't see you in a certain light. But you bring up being a bubbly character. That's interesting you say it, because someone who recently won the Royal Rumble, the Women's Royal Rumble, Bayley, go back to when she first started out. Her gimmick pretty much was, whoa, I love wrestling and I'm here wrestling. And that was her gimmick. And it worked out in the beginning, but then obviously she had to evolve. But being so young like you are and having a bubbly personality, I don't think is a bad thing. I think anything, it's going to help you out. But at the same time, maybe they didn't see something in that. And you even brought up Shawn Michaels was into your entrance. He was bopping and even around. So obviously something has been there. But you brought up injuries. You tore your ACL.
Yes.
And you had a concussion.
Yes.
ACL injuries aren't, no joke. And the thing with that too is that's not just an injury on your body, it's an injury on your mind. Because I'm imagining when you show back up, you're worried that will happen to you again. So every step is maybe a tiptoe versus a run. How did it mentally make you feel having an injury like that?
So I went through a really deep mental health situation kind of right before the ACL tear. So I was on antidepressants and things like that. Like I had a psychiatrist, a therapist. So for me personally, the ACL and meniscus tear wasn't mentally as hard as it was physically. There were days, obviously, you cry, and there's days that like you want to quit and things like that. But they have like such a great support system in the WWE as far as like the rehab people, and like Coach Bloom was there literally by my side the day I tore it. He was sitting there next to me trying to make me laugh, and he's like, "Look at you! You look all snotty," and I'm like crying, and everything. So, like, for me, it wasn't that bad. It was more physical because at the same time, Tommaso Ciampa was going through his rehab at the same time. And then I had a lot of other girls going through the ACL meniscus tear as well. So it wasn't like I was just by myself. And I felt like we all had those talks of like, this is the hardest part. Tommaso would be like, make sure you stretch and this. And like, we jump for the first time. Everyone in medical would be like, oh my God, you go, girl. And like, we just, oh, you got your brace. Oh, look at your brace. You're looking good. And it was very good energy. Because I think at the time that I tore mine and came back, because I was gone for about 3 months and I came back. At that time, it was Yulisa and Brooklyn were about to get medically cleared. So they had like 2 months left. So they were back in the ring. And then it was Nikita there with me. And then a month later, my best friend Sol Ruka tore hers. And then we had Dakota Kai, Sonya Deville, Wendy Chu, and Charlotte Flair. So we had about 8 to 9 people at one time dealing with ACL tears. So it wasn't, yeah.
A good support group there.
Yes, and it was all females. So like we would laugh and sing and dance and cry together and just talk about stuff. Like, yeah, so it wasn't as bad as I could have imagined, I guess. Not that I imagined tearing my ACL.
Yeah, I imagine that's not a fun situation because, again, that seems to be like one of those common wrestling injuries and ACL injuries. I don't know. It just seems to be the call. I don't know what it is. It's something about wrestling and ACLs don't like each other.
But it's weird because when I first started in wrestling, my first 3 years and then my first year and a half at WWE, I never once was like, oh, ACL tears. But it's like as soon as Odyssey Jones tore his ACL, Solo Sikoa, and it was just like bam, 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 and it was like all females. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the curse.
Yeah, I think there is a curse on wrestling ACLs. I don't know what it is. Some witch years ago made
right
a curse
now at least
made a deal. Yeah, there's a lot. We were talking about earlier though. You wrestled Lacy Evans very early in your WWE career on SmackDown. Mm-hmm. And I believe your name was, if I have it correct, Cameron Connors. And so, Cameron Connors, how did this come together? How does you get the phone call? Because again, there's so many talented people. There's so many people who want to get called up, and there you are on SmackDown, taking on Lacy Evans. How's that happen?
So I was enhancement talent at the time, so I wasn't even signed to the company when I did the SmackDown match with Lacy Evans. So I was enhancement talent, and I remember just kind of walking around with Miranda Gordy was there, Erica Torres, Camille Jackson. Trying to think of some other people, like the St. Louis area, Kansas City area. And I remember they were like, we have this spot that we want to do with Miranda Gordy. And she was like, okay, well, I'm not a good seller, or I can't make this look good. Cameron can. And then I was like, what? And they were like, okay, come here. Let's do it. And I remember like practicing like where I stand for cameras because I didn't know cameras at the time. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, when she makes her entrance, I stand here. When she talks on the mic, I stand here. And I remember she called me what did she call me? It was something about like big feet, like clown something. And I know she called me like a tattoo. No, but she called me like a tattoo, green haired nasty. And I was like, oh.
Oh, Lacy Evans did. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, oh, offended.
The name caller.
Yeah, I loved it. She's a sweetheart. But that's kind of how that came about. And that happened. And I went on to go back to do the indies. And it was just like a quick day. They needed an enhancement talent. And I just happened to be right place, right time. And that's pretty much all that happened. I went back into the indies, COVID hit, and yeah.
Wow. Interesting. So, the internet sometimes not very kind to us. And I have been the victim of the internet a few times by asking certain questions at press conferences about Taylor Swift. And
you can't do that. She's a Super Bowl.
Well, no, the Swifties loved me. The Swifties were all about my question. The wrestling fans. Oh my God. I got death threats. I got everything. I had to make everything private. It was a disgusting situation. And, we all make mistakes. We all say things, but whoops, my bad. I still stand by Taylor Swift though, so screw you all. Please don't send hate mail to me. But
don't send death threats, guys. Come on.
No, yeah, I did get those about asking about Taylor Swift, but me, it was insanity. But you're also a victim of harassment online. Unfortunately, we say things by accident. Whoops, we made a mistake. But then Twitter doesn't see it that way. Twitter sees it. I'm going to bury you. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to make you feel terrible, the worst you've ever felt. Even though you already feel bad. You're like, whoops, I made a mistake. You sent out a tweet. We're not going to talk about the context of it, but you sent out a tweet about Sasha Banks. People didn't like that. And then boom, you were a victim of everyone harassing you. Again, tell me, how do you rise up against a mistake? Because obviously people aren't very forgiving on Twitter.
Yeah. I feel like you just kind of have to know yourself and know the kind of person that you are, and that in life, people make mistakes. Like, you're not going to learn and you're not going to get better if you don't make mistakes in life. And I feel like there are things on social media that can sound a certain way in your head. And obviously everyone has their opinion. They're going to take it differently. So at the same time, it's also one of those things of, these people don't know me. They don't know who I am. They know Amari Miller, or they know Cameron Connors, Cameron Burnett, whatever name that I'm going by at the time. But they don't sit here and know, like, how old I am, where I'm from, what my parents' name is. And I feel like at that aspect, I can't take their opinions that deeply. It did suck and it was very hurtful. And there are some people that are still mean about it. And there's some people that have, surpassed it and they're like, this is in the past. It is what it is. But those are also the same people that are going to be in your face, be like, oh my gosh, can I have an autograph? Or I sent you fan mail and I did this. So that's another thing. You put your life publicly. We've all done something. Like, there's so many wrestlers, there's so many famous people that have said something that's went the wrong way, and it happens. You just got to kind of move forward, be like, okay, are the people that matter mad? No. Okay. Did you say sorry? If you obviously like mean to say sorry. Yes. Are you grateful for where you're at? Okay. Get off social media. Let's just let this fizzle out, and then like go on with your next step and ignore them. And I've learned that, like, I'm not a huge person on blocking people. I don't like it. It's a waste of time, like, whatever. But sometimes you do have to go out of your way to block people. And at the same time, like, when people say things to you, it's like, that's a reflection on themselves. And I feel like trolls are going to troll because they're, in a sense, jealous. But if they're not jealous, they just want to find something to do to occupy their time. And we have to keep that in our head as well. Yes. So
100%. And
like deep.
Well, I thank you for sharing, because again, I know I know what it's like to feel the wrath of Twitter and someone being like, I don't like this. I don't like what he said. So we're gonna all pile on together. My wife, but for the record, my wife told me not to ask about Taylor Swift at a wrestling press conference. She warned me, and I did it. But guess what? Like you just said, who was mad? Not the WWE PR people who love me, not the people who pay me weren't mad at me. You know who was mad at me? People who don't give me anything. They don't give me money. They don't give me time, nothing. And so when what's funny is, I'll get a little personal for a second. When I did see some of these people who I know wrote bad things about me, about Taylor Swift in my comments, I saw them face to face at an event one day. I walked right up to these people and I said, do you have anything to say? And they go, what are you about? I read everything. I read everything you wrote about me. Yep, I read it all. I watched your videos. Oh, I didn't make a video. Should I pull it up? Pull it up? And they were like, oh no.
Yeah, like, everyone's tough behind a keyboard. Everyone is tough behind a keyboard. And my dad always made the statement. And it's a little aggressive, but he's like, if you're not hooking up with them, they don't make you happy and they don't pay you, their opinions don't matter.
Yep.
And that always stuck with me. And I remember Kaylee Ray, she is one of my best freaking friends in this whole entire world. She made me feel worse than anybody else in a good way. And I mean, as in, like, she's like a big sister to me. So she was like, now Cameron, you know. And I was like, I know, and I didn't mean it that way, and I'm sorry. But
yeah,
he helps me through a lot. And like, yeah,
some wrestlers also have a very dedicated fan audience, and
I hit one of those nerves, and I realized
you hit one of those you hit that fandom on that person, and that was enough. I trust me. There's a few of them out there. Becky Lynch has them. Liv Morgan has them. Speaking of Liv Morgan, though, is it true that you trained her to get prepared for the Royal Rumble this year?
I
Trained
wouldn't
with
say
her.
train. There you go. I wouldn't say train
That's
her. I was like, what do I know? No. Yes. So Liv was in rehab with me, and we just became good friends through rehab. And I remember I got medically cleared a little bit before her, and we got in the ring together, and we were just kind of rolling around doing whatever. And she likes to go hard, and so do I. And she made this statement of, we were about to get ready to lock up, and I was like, I'm so blown up. She's like, this difference between good and great. And I was like, you know what? Huh, let's go. But we did a lot of training, a lot of thinking about new moves, a lot of ideas and things like that. So we went hard for like, I would say about a month and a half, every day in the ring. And it was like, even if we had 30 minutes, it was just straight cardio. Or we would just work around in the ring and think of ideas and things like that. So even when we didn't have a ring, we would go like on the side and think of stuff and move around. So Liv she's a beast. Like, she is a different type of beast. And I remember she was like, I don't like, what did she say? She was like, I don't feel like my cardio is that great. I'm out of breath, and I train 4 days a week here. I was like, Liv, you're doing fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were training with her, were you aware that she was getting ready for the Royal Rumble?
Yes and no. So there were talks about it, because nothing's ever in certain with the WWE. Like, they could tell you one thing and then 2 weeks later be something else. So it was more of like, she wanted to be ready for her return. And I remember us talking and saying she would be medically cleared by the Rumble. But I didn't know she was going to be in the Rumble. It was just like, because people return after Rumble, people return the Monday after, the Friday after. So I wasn't aware when she was returning. I just knew it was around the time of the Rumble.
And then was the video I saw, I believe, is off of maybe yours or Liv Morgan's Instagram. But are you at Natalia's wrestling school?
Yes, we were at the dungeon. Yes.
And what's that like? Because Natalia always posts pictures of the characters and the people who come in there. Mercedes Monet was there recently, and then Carlito's there, and Liv Morgan and you are training there. Like, who is there when you were there, maybe? And then what's it like being there with Natalia?
I'll start with what it's like. It is absolutely amazing. And I think it's great because you're with the indie people, and it's like that extra love that the indie people have that they haven't made to WWE yet. But it's also like, Natty has so much knowledge and so much love for this business, and she's so open to giving it out to everybody. And so is TJ. So it's such a fast training session, I guess, in a sense, because time just like goes by so quickly. But it was so much fun. I feel like I needed it. It was like a decompress from WWE in a sense of like training at WWE, but then also like coming outside of WWE and training as well, of like, I can throw my kicks here, or I can, learn the Owen Hart pin. And it's just, I guess, with less eyes being on you, is a little bit more relaxing. And then also being in a warehouse situation with just big fans, it just brought me back to my indie days, and I absolutely loved it. The people that were there when I was there mostly was Ashanti the Adonis, what was it? Moose from TNA or Impact. I think he's champ right now. Khalil, he works for the dungeon. Cameron Fox, he's in the dungeon always. Natty, TJ. We had a lot of Kelsey Heather. We had Renee Michelle, Drake Maverick's wife. She was there a lot. Lyra Valkyria is my girl. We always traveled together up there. She's amazing. B-Fab was always there. I'm trying to think, because Odyssey Jones just started going towards the end of the time that I was going. Then that's pretty much it. I never really crossed any of the main roster people. Jessica Carr was there for a little bit, kind of just like moving around. But like whenever there'd be like bigger people, like Nia was there, Summer Rae was there, like you said, Mercedes Monet was there. I wasn't there that week. And I remember seeing the videos and be like, oh, dang it. The 1 week I didn't go, they're there. Like, oh, crap.
Oh, man. That sounds like a lot of good times. Yeah, Natalia is an awesome person. Every time I get home and I park my car, this random cat in my neighborhood, my neighbor's cat jumps in my car, and I'm like, ah! So I sent a picture to Natty, and then when I saw her at the Royal Rumble, I was like, what's up with this cat? Why does it want to frighten me at 1 a.m. every night? And she's like, let me explain to you. I was like, not too long, because I only have like 8 minutes with you. So not too long about cats. I love cats and I love you, but please I only have a few
That
minutes.
sounds like natty. They have a not an abandoned cat, but like a stray cat outside of their dungeon. And it's funny because we'll be like practicing doing whatever, and we'll look to the right, and TJ's like outside with his phone, like, we're like, what are you doing? He's like, there's a cat. I'm like, you guys have enough cats at home.
Yeah, you guys are definitely perfect for each other if you guys are filming cats while you're also training wrestlers. But
yes.
So what is next for you? Because right now you and the WWE have separated, but the door is not closed. But what are you up to now? What are your plans, say, in the next few months?
So I'm very open about everything with everyone, and I truly don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm going to continue wrestling. I don't know if I want to just do interviews and appearances. I've been in talks with certain people about certain things. I'm not going to give it away just yet, but there are certain talks in to me getting into other promotions, not necessarily getting signed to any promotions anytime soon, but definitely just like working and getting, my face out there again. It's kind of like a reset for me. So definitely going to be back on the indies. Just don't know what I'll be doing necessarily. It's only been 4 days, so I'm trying to just, figure out in the right time span.
Right. Don't jump into the river too quick.
Exactly.
It might take you to the bottom, hit some rocks. So
that's something you don't need.
No, dip those toes in.
Yeah.
But again, thank you for sharing your tale of everything you've gone through so far, from ACL injuries to training with Matt Bloom, who had a penis piercing name. So
yeah,
I still think that's one of the strangest things. As a child, I'm 38. I think you're 27. So it's like, as I'm older and I'm watching wrestling as a child, my parents aren't really bothering me. They're like, oh, he's in the other room watching TV. He won't bother me.
It's like,
and there's a guy who has a penis tattoo name. There's a porn star. There's a pimp. There's all this craziness. My parents never questioned what I was watching until I wore a shirt that said "Suck It" onto school, was where it all started. But I didn't buy that. I wasn't old enough. They bought me. My parents bought me that "Suck It" shirt. Okay, so I blame them for me getting suspended that day.
Exactly. That's so funny.
Yeah, it's funny now, but it wasn't when I was in 7th grade. But
I can tell you so many stories that weren't funny either from my parents, like going around and being like, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, suck it. And they're like, you're a lady. And I'm like, yeah, but they said it on TV. Yeah. And they're having fun.
Why can't I also say it? I want to say suck it to people. Yeah.
Hey, all the time. All the time.
I remember my grandmother bought me a Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt, and it was double birds. And again, here you go, little Stevie, happy birthday. And there's thank you, Grandma, but you realize this is a giant skull giving 2 middle fingers. Here, happy birthday. Oh, thank you, Grandma. Thank you.
Exactly, but how happy were you? That's all the grandmas care about.
Exactly. And I'm just happy we were able to sit here and chat about Batista and all that good stuff. So Amari Miller, thank you so much for being here on Tencon Wrestling News Co. I greatly appreciate your time, and hopefully some people are inspired by your words today, and we'll see what happens next with you. But I am Steve Fall. She's Amari Miller. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. See you
Bye-bye.